What is happening with SNAP? And did Justice Jackson on the Supreme Court betray SNAP recipients last night? And what is the Trump regime doing to SNAP benefits today? I am Matthew Cortland. I am a lawyer. I have personally relied on SNAP benefits. I have represented SNAP beneficiaries, and in my day job, I work on federal food nutrition security policy. Let's talk about what is actually happening. First, last night, Justice Jackson did not betray SNAP beneficiaries. Justice Jackson was put in the position of having to do harm reduction, harm mitigation. The Trump regime appealed a Rhode Island court's order that the Trump regime fully fund November SNAP benefits at 100%. The Trump regime appealed that Rhode Island District Court order to the First Circuit Court of Appeals. And yesterday afternoon, the First Circuit Court of Appeals said, we're not going to stop the clock while we figure this out. The Rhode Island District Court's order to fully fund SNAP benefits at 100% by Friday, November 7th was still in effect. And so the Trump regime, the Department of Justice, which doesn't work for the American people anymore, it works for Donald Trump, ran to the Supreme Court and said, we want you to hit pause. We don't want to have to comply with this Rhode Island District Court order to fully fund SNAP benefits Friday, November 7th. They asked for a ruling by 9:30 p.m. Justice Jackson is the circuit justice for the First Circuit. Each circuit, the country is split up into circuits. Each circuit has a justice at the Supreme Court with sort of responsibility for handling incoming paper from that circuit, emergency motions like we saw out of the Trump regime yesterday. That goes to Justice Jackson. Now, if Justice Jackson had ignored it, procedurally, the government would have been allowed to go to another member of the Supreme Court. They could have gone to the Chief Justice, John Roberts. Not a great guy. If Justice Jackson had the other thing to know here is Justice Jackson can count, right? She knows there are 3 people on that court probably who are pretty firmly in the camp of don't starve 42 million people. And she has a better idea than I do of where the other justices on the court not in that camp are. So what she did was she was forced to do something, and she chose the option that did the least harm. She said, I'll give you the administrative stay. We'll hit pause, but only until after the First Circuit rules on the substantive motion, and then you get 48 hours, and then time resumes. It was a harm reduction move. Anyone blaming Justice Jackson in this situation doesn't know what the fuck they're talking about. That's the first thing to know. I don't want anyone out there to think that if this comes back to the Supreme Court, and it almost certainly will, but 98, 99% certain it will, Justice Jackson will vote against SNAP beneficiaries because of the action she was essentially forced to take yesterday. It's clear to me as a lawyer, she went out of her way to fashion an order that was limited and narrow and designed to reduce harm, and also designed to not let the Trump regime continue to stall. So, don't worry, I'm not worried that Justice Jackson will ultimately vote against SNAP beneficiaries. The First Circuit is working on its ruling of whether or not the Trump regime should have to pay 100% of USDA SNAP benefits for November. But today, minutes ago, within the last hour, I would say, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, in the 25 other blue states in D.C. that are litigating a SNAP case in Massachusetts, went to the First Circuit in that Rhode Island case and said, actually, we have some really, really, really important information that we can't wait to tell you. So we're filing this letter on a Saturday evening to tell you what's happening, the chaos that the Trump regime has caused in the SNAP program by failing to move all of the money. And what it comes down to is the Trump regime ordered the Treasury not to pay out funds to certain states that had tried to process their full SNAP allotments because that's what the Trump regime told them to do yesterday. That's what the Food and Nutrition Service told them to do. So if you live in Wisconsin, and you rely on SNAP in Wisconsin, or you know anyone who does, I would message them immediately and tell them to go grocery shopping now. Because what this letter says is, in Wisconsin, and it just uses Wisconsin as an example. I wish I knew what was going on with every other state. I don't. This letter uses Wisconsin as a for instance and a for example. In Wisconsin, there are insufficient SNAP funds to reimburse retailers for the provisions sold to SNAP recipients. At this time, Wisconsin has less than 2 days of cash remaining on the letter of credit based on current SNAP recipient spending. Wisconsin had a balance of about $19.5 million as of 10 p.m. on November 7th. The daily spend from 12:01 a.m. through 10 p.m. on November 7th was approximately $9.9 million. Without immediate action, Wisconsin Department of Human Services will likely exceed its letter of credit on Monday. I was just reading from the letter that blue states filed with the First Circuit. I have relatively high confidence in the recommendation that if you live in Wisconsin and you rely on SNAP, you should go grocery shopping immediately. You should not wait. Lower confidence in the recommendation that if you have SNAP benefits, an EBT card, recently filled, particularly if you're in a blue state. Less confidence here in my recommendation. I am guessing. I want to be very transparent. I am guessing, but I would go and spend immediately. If not tonight, tomorrow. I think that is the safest course of action. Again, higher confidence in the Wisconsin recommendation than in the general recommendation, relatively lower confidence there because of the chaos that the Trump regime has deliberately induced in the SNAP system. I can't with high confidence tell you the best play, but I think it is protective, it is safer, it is risk averse to go spend SNAP benefits sooner rather than later.